Welcome to On the Sports Lines. If you love awkwardly shaking the commissioner's hand wearing a hat from a team that you're most likely not going to be representing in your rookie season, this is the show for you. Welcome to the NBA Draft Recap Offseason edition of On the Sports Lines. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan, and we've talked about player empowerment with regards to the NBA on this show at various points. I'm going to do it again later tonight, but just when I thought I saw everything, Ace Bailey, come on, dude, who do you think you are? Get over yourself. You
And
ain't
I
earned
meant
nothing to be able to call that nonsense.
and I mentioned this straight. If the NBA really want to maintain this viewership advantage they've had the last several weeks, I want Kendrick Perkins and Bill Simmons in a one-on-one boxing match I would even put it on, don't put it on pay-per-view. Put it live on ESPN2 or the Ocho. I would definitely tune in to watch that.
Nice.
Only Kendrick Perkins can defend the Toronto Raptors being a top five team next year, and then their main king piece immediately resigns the day after. It's literally what happened with Masai Ujiri leaving Toronto today. All right, the NBA goes fast. We're less than 5 days past the end of the regular season and less than 24 hours past the NBA draft, but somehow we'll talk both on tonight's show. Also, it's a preview of the offseason moves to come for some teams and a review of the first pro sports championship for Oklahoma City as the Thunder struck big. Have you got the big balls to subscribe to On the Sports Lines on Facebook? Have you got the chance to go back in black backgrounds and see our on-demand stuff at youtube.com/slash on the sports lines? Well, whatever it is, we'll ACDC you there. That's enough puns for the evening. In a
Wow.
blockbuster trade that made the NBA world take notice just before the NBA Finals Game 7 tipped off. And by the way, God bless his soul. You think Commissioner Stern would even allow something to take off the attention of a Game 7
Oh,
with a superstar when you
no,
have
he would
two
not.
mid-market teams in there? He's rolling over in his grave right now, and that is a fact. Anyway, the Houston Rockets looking to get that big piece for a championship run acquired what I hoped is that piece in a 15-time All-Star in Kevin Durant. The Phoenix Suns just happy to have a superstar without a no trade clause, so they could get rid of to do a little bit of rebuilding. Acquired back the following: Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, the number 10 pick in this year's draft, that was Duke's. Come on, Maluwach, and 5 second-round picks. You say you can't go home again, but if you're Kevin Durant, there's no actual permanent home to go to. So that doesn't exist. Anthony, examine this trade, starting ironically enough with the Suns ends of these things.
Yeah. Before I start, didn't this have a Rod acting out of his contract in the middle of the World Series built to it? Yeah.
Here's the thing with it, though. That was a game four. That was a game four of a boring series. This was a game seven of the NBA Finals. So this is something like in a completely different stratosphere.
Yeah. Well, for the Suns, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that this trade for Kevin Durant wasn't going to work out. It didn't work out really for the last 2 years. And you look at what they had to do. They was never going to get the full sum of the parts, or at least the equal value that they gave away to the Brooklyn Nets and bringing Durant over to Phoenix and a wholesale becoming a championship team. And the last 2 years, we just seen this team regress because of injuries, inconsistency, coaching changes the last couple of years, and it just finally came to the head. Well, for the Suns, it was definitely about removing Kevin Durant's salary, and obviously it was going to be a roster change up, a roster rebuild. Currently on their roster right now is Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Jalen Green, Devin Brooks, and Grayson Allen. Those are the players are all under contract over the next season. Ironically, all of them are shooting guards. So the Suns front office have a heck of a lot to do. But the worst case scenario of all this is if the Suns went into a win down mentality and brought in more veterans, that while it may lead to some wins on the court, may saddle them even more financial burden in down the line. Now with Jalen Green, with the Rockets getting back and Jalen Green, well, the Suns I should say, the Rockets
Yes, I
gave
do.
Jalen Green a $33 million extension. Um, and but and the Suns are just hoping with Jalen Green that while he's shown signs of potential in Houston, they're hoping he can really kind of step it up, playing next to Devin Booker, a guy who's going to draw more defensive attention, and that may open up Green a little more. And Dylan Brooks, they automatically get the best perimeter defender on the team, without question. The key though, and that number 10 pick, which went to what's his name, Kamula, I can't pronounce his name.
Come on, Maluak.
Kamal Malua, yes.
Maluach.
I had it right. I had it right earlier because he was actually on the Nets radar as far as mock drafts is concerned. But man, he's someone when you draft someone down high, you're hoping to step in and contribute immediately. But the key to the Suns is going to be Bradley Beal and what happens with him because he's I think he is the only one in the NBA that still has a no trade clause. And those things are stink right about now. Like nobody really has those anymore. But Bradley Beal has that. And if the Suns are going to try to move him, he has to waive that no trade clause. And that's where the Suns are kind of stuck. If they can find a trade partner, maybe that helps. But at the same time, because of Bradley Beal's salary, they will have to get a lot back in equal value, not just financially, but also something that can help them long term, whether it is a couple of players at bad contracts, a couple of contracts they have to eat, or a couple of players that can step in on some draft picks. But yeah, the Phoenix Suns right now, they have to tear it down. I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to. They tried to go all in. They tried to go for a championship. It didn't quite work out. I think this is an organization. I said the Chicago Bulls was another team that I think is just prolonging the inevitable as far as rebuilding. And don't be surprised if Devin Booker, who was the franchise player, is in a trade consideration as well because the Suns they need assets right now, and that's something that they gave up way too much in this Durant deal. It's going to take them a while to kind of get everything back in the fold as far as draft picks, as far as player capital. It's just like this team really has to get back to the drawing board. And the Durant deal, which by the way happened while he was on stage at Fanatic Fest, it's a step in the right direction, but they have a lot of more steps to go for this Phoenix Suns team now and for the foreseeable future.
Well, there's a 2-year, $150 million option that Phoenix is willing to give, has been offering Devin Booker. That's probably going to happen because, again, I think you want to do the whole burn it down situation, but when there's only really 10 spots of play in and playoff to take, you're going to have teams to fill it, and you have to fill up a stadium. That's the biggest problem of this whole thing. You can go through a rebuilding process as much as you want, but when the prices are so high to watch an NBA game and you go all in, you fail. But unfortunately, you can't just be like, let's tear everything down and go back up. You have to put on somewhat of a viable contender. And unfortunately for Devin Booker's bank account, but unfortunately for his credit later on, that's what's going to happen, in my opinion. But
yeah. And before, I didn't mean to cut you off before you continue. And you made a good point, but here's the thing: you don't want to be stuck in that mediocrity like playing scenario where you're not good enough to be a top 8 playoff team, but you're not bad enough to where you can get a high draft pick. At least take advantage of having a mediocre season, and that's kind of I call a Bermuda Triangle that if you can avoid by either tearing it down or even at the very least, just taking a lost season to try to get some draft capital back and to rebuild from scratch, it may be worth a consideration.
We'll see what happens. There's a ton of teams right now in that Bermuda Triangle. On my side of the fence here, I think the problem of this is a fleece, I think, in terms of what's going to happen with Houston. This is a fleece, in my opinion, just because of the fact that the big thing with Jalen Green is the fact of redundancy. He was kind of getting phased out in a small shooting guard lineup with the Rockets, even when it comes to people like Van Vliet and other people who play the position and play it more consistently. And Green is a star who wants to get a shot. So he has a 3-year, $105 million extension coming. So unfortunately, that's a problem, and that's why he was the most expendable. I think the Suns may have wanted someone more flexible like a Jabari Smith, but the Rockets were like, we're going to toe the line here because we know what you need to do to at least start your process of getting back to what you can, and it doesn't involve Kevin Durant. The thing that's interesting is the fact that outside of the number 10 pick that they gave, which was their pick, by the way, to begin with in Phoenix, it's literally just giving it back when you think about it. They gave away 5 second-round draft picks. If you've seen Knicks fans mention the fact that we'll talk about it a lot in this show, that they gave away 5 first-round draft picks for Mikal Bridges, giving it the second-round draft picks for what the Rockets needed in their loss to Golden State last year in a 7-game series of that scoring. And Durant can provide that scoring. You think Durant wants to score on Golden State? I think that's a very good possibility. And by the way, Jalen Green goes to a team where he is now a third guard on a team heavy with guards in Bradley Beal and Devin Booker, who are going to be in Phoenix for the foreseeable future. So I think Houston, as Anthony just dropped out here for a second, he'll come back in just a moment. I think what you see here, Jay, is we're going to get to the Kevin Durant legacy piece of all of this, which you've been examining, is the fact that I truly think that this has been the best case scenario for the Rockets. This is something that their GM did a very good job giving up, I think, the least that you can for the pedigree that Kevin Durant has. And Anthony, I'm going to throw it over to Jay right now. The Kevin Durant piece, and this is very interesting. A lot of Hall of Famers are built on consistency, and this is top 5 for Kevin Durant. And will it be his last, is the question.
Yeah, Rabbi, when you and I were talking about the trade, this past weekend, I made the comment that the dumbest thing that Durant did was leave Golden State. And you said it partly was because he didn't want to deal with Draymond. I get that. Durant has long been known for having a thin skin, but I think it goes beyond that. For some reason, and it's an itch he just can't seem to stop scratching, he seems to have this need to be the alpha on a title-winning team, and it's why someone of his skill set and resume, he'll be a first-ballot Hall of Famer when he decides to hang up his sneakers, can't seem to stop changing teams. With this trade, Durant, as you said, will be on his 5th team following tours of duty with the Seattle Supersonics / Oklahoma City Thunder, Golden State Warriors, Brooklyn Nets, and Phoenix Suns. With OKC, where he, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook formed the first big 3 of Durant's career, he made the Western Conference Finals 4 times in 8 seasons, winning once, 2011-12, but lost to LeBron and the Heatles in the finals. He left and joined the Warriors in 2016-17 and helped the Steph, Clay, Dre dynasty to the finals in each of his 3 seasons there, winning a ring and finals MVP in his first 2 in 16-17 and 17-18. He was injured and didn't play much in the loss to the Raptors in 18-19, and then things got uncomfortable, and he got the wanderlust and that itch to be the man again, so he, Harden, and Kyrie Irving used their player empowerment powers to the extreme to create a big 3 in Brooklyn. In 3 seasons there, Durant never got past the conference semis, and he only got there once in his 2nd season. And in keeping with the 3 seasons and move on theme, Durant decided to change laundry again, this time to Phoenix, where his big 3 teammates range from Chris Paul, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. He lost to Denver in the semis his first season as a Sun, to the T-Wolves in the first round in his second, and didn't make the playoffs this past season. So, yep, once again, after 3 years, he decided to move on. This time using his player empowerment powers to orchestrate a trade to Houston so he could once again play for Ime Udoka, who was his head coach in Brooklyn, and where he'll pair with recently re-signed guard Fred VanVleet and a couple of rising youngsters in Alperen Sengun and Amen Thompson in what might be Durant's last chance to scratch his win a title as the alpha itch. He has 1 year left on his current contract at $54.7 million and is eligible this summer for a 2-year extension worth up to $122 million. The 15-time All-Star turns 37 in September, so by the time this latest 3-year stretch is up, he'll be on the cusp of 40, which makes you wonder if this will in fact be his last contract. And what I found interesting was that after Rabbi and I had our conversation, a story by Logan Murdoch of The Ringer came out and revealed that the reason that the rumored reunion with the Warriors leading up to this season's trade deadline didn't happen was, quote, Durant's exit from the Bay Area arguably had more to do with his issues with Steve Kerr than any shouting match with Green. Durant reportedly complained both publicly and privately about Kerr's offensive principles during his final season with the Warriors, and he continued to do so even after he left for Brooklyn. Murdoch went on to say that while Kerr and Durant have since made peace, NBA sources say that Kerr was still one of the reasons Durant decided against a reunion in the city by the Bay. If that was the real reason Durant left the Warriors after winning those 2 titles and 2 finals MVP awards, I have to shake my head and call a diva a diva. Durant averaged 25.8 points per game on 52.4% from the floor, 38.4 from 3, 88.3 from the line, with 7 boards, 5.4 dimes during his 3 regular seasons. In the playoffs, he shot 51% from the floor, almost 40% from 3, and almost 90% from the line, putting up 29.6 points per game with 7.1 boards, 4.5 assists in his 3 playoff runs with Golden State. So Kerr's offensive principles didn't seem to have too much of a negative effect on KD's production. In my humble opinion, and it may just be me, it doesn't paint Durant in a great light and adds to a narrative of selfishness that surrounds one of the best scorers in NBA history, especially when, according to ESPN's Brian Windhorst, Durant repeatedly declined to trade packages from other teams to ensure he landed exactly where he wanted, once again using his player empowerment power to bend NBA teams to his will. Will he improve the Rockets' offense? Without a doubt. If he stays healthy, KD's ability as an efficient 3-level scorer will immediately raise Houston's ceiling on offense, allow Udoka to expand his offensive playbook, as well as give him multiple lineup and rotation options. But will that result in an NBA title? I'm not going to bet the farm on that, not with the depth of the Western Conference and the Thunder still having A, plenty of draft capital, and 2, their big 3 under control for the length of Durant's projected tenure as a Rocket. Kevin Durant's resume will remain Springfield worthy no matter what happens in Houston, but his legacy, maybe not so much.
2 things, and I can't believe you're making me think of actually defending Kevin Durant here. Number 1, and I'm going to say it, you did. So number 1 for me is war on the whole, moving from the Thunder to the Warriors. Not necessarily staying on the Warriors and what happened in the 2018-2019 season, which was cut short, unfortunately, by injury and that Achilles tendon tear in Game 5. The first thing I want to say is I think we've always talked about the word optics on this show. And there's 2 optics that I kind of want to see. I kind of wanted to question what KD would think in his career. Number 1, the optics of playing on a team that came within 1 game of defeating the Oklahoma City, of defeating the Golden State Warriors. They could have been that 73-win team in the NBA Finals against Cleveland in 2016. But then came the Game 6 Clay game, and then came Game 7. And then moving from that to Golden State was seen at the time as a move that did not look great optics-wise. That looked legacy damning to begin with. The second
because it looked like he was trying to jump on a train that had already left the station and had picked up steam, and he was ring chasing. I get it. When you go there for the first one, but considering how instrumental he was in getting them those 2 rings,
it's true.
I think that reduced the negative on the optics that were there when we first knew that he was going to leave and go to the dynasty.
The second thing I would think of is just after all of that time was done, minus the curse stuff, minus everything else, Kevin Durant is going to be considered a top, let's be nice, 15 player of all time.
Made the 75th anniversary team.
Made the 75th anniversary team. To be that and to basically be in the role of where he would, that would never have been his team. That would never have been his team. That is Steph's team.
Yeah.
I think it was just more of a natural progression in his career that he wanted. And I think that's why this happened. I don't know if it should happen, but that's just what I'm thinking. And those are two things really to ponder going forward about when we talk in 8 years when Kevin Durant gets put into the Hall of Fame, 7 years, whatever,
Mhm.
as this is the line where we think of this is sliding doors moment. Not necessarily the moment of staying in Oklahoma City, but the moment of going from Golden State to Brooklyn.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because we all know that when a player retires, the 5 years that where he's kind of no longer in the public eye before he gets enshrined and made immortal in the Hall of Fame, rose-colored glasses tend to get put on sometimes, and certain things are romanticized. It'll be interesting to see where when it's all said and done, how he will be remembered.
All right, let's remember more stuff from this NBA draft that just happened. So the top of the draft went just the way these two of my cohorts like it. Chalk, chalk, and more chalk. No zags, no additional analysis, just the way you guys like it to move on to other topics of the night where there were too many trades. All right, let's talk about the NBA draft's top three. All the teams in here, by the way, no beans doing actual rebuilding. They want to win and they want to win a lot quicker than a team would be in the top three. That's what makes it so interesting. So, Anthony, despite the waking up in the morning by GM Nico Harrison thinking, trade, 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 it didn't happen. The Dallas Mavericks did the thing that they should do, and they kept the pick and picked up Cooper Flag, power forward from Duke with pick number one. I don't even say right pick, wrong pick, Anthony, but what does this do for the Dallas Mavericks in the future as they pick up one of the better players to ever come out of college into the common NBA draft in this era?
Well, considering it's not going to get rid of the fire Nico chance anytime soon. Have you
Never
saw
should.
at the Mavericks draft party? Considering the Mavericks had a 1.8% chance of landing the number one pick, and they just happened to get this months after trading Luka Doncic. Look, what are the odds? But Cooper Flag was the captain obvious, number one pick. The fifth freshman to win the Naismith College Player of the Year, averaged 19 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals a game. Started 37-39 games to the Duke Blue Devils. Just missing two with a sprained ankle in the ACC tournament. And he's joining a team that already has all-stars in Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving, who signed for a 3-year extension earlier this week. So he's got So he's already got two players who are in the prime of their careers and who's already won championships that he can now call teammates for the foreseeable future. One of the youngest players in the draft class led the Blue Devils obviously to a 35-4 record, took to the NCAA Final Four last season. His best game that we all witnessed when he was doing our NCAA tournament shows against Arizona in the Sweet 16, notched 30.7 assists, 6 rebounds, and 3 blocks. Most freshmen in NCAA tournament history to record at least 25 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 blocks in the contest. He is joining a team that he is going to be able to it's a rarity that a number one overall pick joins a team that can actually contend. And in the case of Cooper Flag, he's going to be called on to contribute immediately and contribute immediately to a team that, yes, did make the play-in tournament. However, between injuries, the Mavericks, I think, lost an enormous amount of playing time due to injuries. Davis obviously won. Kyrie Irving coming back from an ACL tear and suffered halfway through last season. Um, the potential on Cooper Flag is unbelievable. Is pretty much as high as we've seen as number one pick in recent memory. But the fact that when you look at his productivity, versatility, competitiveness, a guy who can score at all three levels of offense, very staunch defender, and immediately he gets to contribute to a team that can get back to the playoffs. But also, we saw a couple years ago when the Mavericks got to the NBA Finals, how much Kyrie Irving's maturity really stood out and how he's become more of the locker room leader that I think Brooklyn Nets fans was hoping that they were inheriting when he started with the team back in 2019. That is going to be a big help for a young player like Cooper Flag. to be able to not just learn how to be a professional on and off the basketball court, but also learn the ins and outs of the NBA. This is a draft pick that even Nico himself could not mess up
Grew
unless
up.
yeah, I cannot screw up completely. I'm trying to keep it PG tonight. I promise a few people I'll keep my language nice and clean, at least until the next show. But yes, Cooper Flag, this is an obvious number one pick. It's a can't miss pick. And the Mavericks go immediately to a team that a lot of people look at could at least possibly get into the top four, maybe five in the Western Conference.
Okay, Kendrick Perkins, calm down with that top four, top five in the Western Conference type deal, and let's
Uh,
hold
uh,
off expectations a
uh,
little bit
yeah,
there.
but outside
You,
Oklahoma
are you
City, the
Nico?
rest
Are
of the
you
West
Nico
is
Harrison in disguise? There, thinking top four, top five in the Western Conference.
that's a
A lofty goal.
ceiling. The
It's a
lofty
loft.
goal, but I could definitely see the Mavericks getting back into the playoffs as a
I
top
get
eight
to,
seed.
yeah. Absolutely. I think that there's a lot of potential on there, especially if everyone stays healthy, but it's a big if, as our friend Nolan Toppin used to say.
Indeed.
By the way, do you want to speak about generational number one picks? Victor Wembanyama of the Spurs is definitely one of those. And by hook or by crook, once again, the Spurs got a top three pick in this NBA draft, and they decided to go with Rutgers guard Dylan Harper. Pretty much consensus number two, pretty much from probably the word jump
Across the
of
board.
this year's draft. 6'6". He again consensus number two pick pretty much from the beginning of the year when he played for when he started for Rutgers. In this season with Rutgers, it was 19.4 points, 4.6 rebounds, 4 assists. Shot 33.3% from three-point range, but did lead the team in points and assists. Harper also led the team in steals. Ace Bailey was a pretty good Robin, but the Batman of that team was Dylan Harper. Outside this camp, there was speculation that Dylan Harper was not thrilled about going to a team that has a very deep roster of quality guards already. De'Aaron Fox, as you know, is in this team from last year, getting traded from Sacramento to San Antonio. Stephon Castle, who is the reigning rookie of the year, is also part of this backcourt. But Harper, combo guard, a lot like Castle, but as much as I hate to not badmouth or give praise to someone above a UConn grad, Harper is much better at that position. 19.4 points, 4.6 rebounds, 4 assists, 48% of the floor last season. Not a classically explosive player, but a guy with about as much court IQ as possible. His father is Ron Harper, who was the number 8 pick in the 86 draft, 15 seasons, 5 championships. And his mother, Maria, played college ball at the University of New Orleans and is still a basketball coach to this day, by the way. And of course, Dylan's older brother also played at Rutgers. That's Ron Harper Jr. Played 11 games this year for the Pistons, and that's a basketball pedigree. Some people, like Paul Biancardi of New Jersey, a scout from New Jersey Advanced Media, also called Dylan Harper a bigger, stronger Jalen Brunson, navigating the ball screen with scoring ability and a keen understanding of reading the coverage to help defense effectively off 2 feet as he approaches the basket, finds the open pocket space for his mid-range shot. Great at creating advantages, getting downhill, scoring off drives, confident attacker who gets out in transition, finishes creatively, and scores through contact and strong body control. Great finisher. Not a shooter, but has shot making skill. So he is a guy who will give you the heat check whenever you want for a team that's going to be loaded with scorers. But got to watch him off the dribble. He might be more prone to turning the ball over more times, and he didn't really get a lot of defensive lessons last year for a very, very disappointing Rutgers team. But Dylan Harper is the second best player in this draft, and honestly, it's not even close in my book. I think this is a very good pick for the Spurs. Again, this is chalk. This is obviously the right pick, and the Spurs prayed for this, and it happened. Getting a very, very good pick to go along with a strong team that's just in the castle, preparing for battle. And when they come out with full artillery, I think the rest of the NBA needs to launch out. They might be just as good as anybody outside of the state of Oklahoma within 1 to 2 years. We'll see what happens.
It happens. Only time will tell if Wembanyama and Harper are the next coming of Robinson and Duncan. We'll see.
I don't think it's going to be a Robinson Duncan situation just
No,
because
I mean, it's a loose comparison.
There's a
making
lot of
a direct
Parkers and
comparison.
Ginobilis on this team, more or less. The Duncan is Wembanyama, and then everybody else kind of fills it out. All right. Jay, as a reward or a consequence of their 2024-2025, the Sixers got pick 3. They kept it and picked VJ Edgecombe, Baylor guard. Right pick or wrong one? This is the first one that didn't go what it would have been in the preseason or what it would have been about a few months ago.
Hell,
Sixers have a lot of work. You thought this would be a traded pick, but the Sixers have a lot of work to do, and this is the start.
Yeah, I mean, this is everybody believed that, the first 2 picks were locked in from jump, and the prevailing opinion was the 3rd pick is where the draft actually starts because there was a lot of people, as you said, myself included, who didn't see this coming. I was surprised that Philly actually kept the pick. With Daryl Morey's reputation as a wheeler dealer, I fully expected the 76ers to trade down to collect more draft assets. That being said, this is a right-ish pick. The qualifier is there because I felt the Sixers should have gone with Con Knuppel. I know it sounds weird for a Tar Heel fan to be stumping for a Dookie, but it's because Knuppel's primary skill set is that he is a knockdown shooter. 14.4 points per game. He shot 47.9% from the floor, 40.6% from 3 on 5.3 per game, and 91.4% from the line. And that's a skill that's translatable to the NBA level, and 2, something that the Sixers need more of around Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. Instead, they chose to go with a guard whose primary skill set is defense, which is also translatable at the NBA level. And which isn't a bad thing either, considering the rest of the projected backcourt rotation, Maxey, Jared McCain, Quentin Grimes, possibly Justin Edwards, is lacking, in some cases severely, as defenders, especially on the ball. Edgecombe gives them a dynamic guard with an elite level of athleticism, especially defensively, where disruptive is the word that best describes his skill set in this area. Edgecombe at 6'4" doesn't increase the size of the backcourt. Maxey and McCain are 6'2", but by drafting him, Philly adds to the depth of its guard rotation. Off the floor, the Sixers liked how he interviewed during the pre-draft process. He came off as poised, polished, and professional. On the floor, the Baylor product, who averaged 15 points a game on 43.6% from the floor, 34% from 3 on 4.6 attempts per game, and 78.2% from the stripe on 4.3 attempts per game, with 5.6 boards, 3.2 assists, and 2.1 steals, gives them a player with possibly the best balance between high floor and high ceiling. Which makes him one of the safest picks in the draft. It starts with his skills on defense, which is his floor, and that what will probably get him rotation minutes with a coach like Nick Nurse. Edgecombe loves to be at the point of attack. He blows up dribble handoffs, gets over screens, chases over the top. He creates transition opportunities by getting into passing lanes and by picking the pockets of ball handlers. What intrigues Philly the most is what that ceiling could be. Morey thinks he has all-star upside. Others have compared him to a young Victor Oladipo, who became one of the better two-way players before injuries curtails his career. Getting that level will require Edgecombe to improve his offensive skill set, starting with his shooting and his ball handling. He's not a great shooter, but he can make shots. He's solid off the catch and was making strides at knocking down threes off movement, but he needs to improve off pull-ups. He's better right now in transition, which is a byproduct of his defense. And he knows how to cut and play without the ball in his hands. He does need to improve both his handle as well as his pick and roll play, which is an NBA staple. His personality would seem to indicate a work ethic and want to improve his game. If he can develop the full shooting skill set, improve his ability off the bounce, his ceiling might even be as high as Dwayne Wade. But if all he nets out as is a more athletic version of Gary Trent, which is who Sam Vecini, the NBA draft guru of The Athletic, compares Edgecombe to, then Philly will have a guard who potentially averages 15 points, 3 boards, 3 dimes, and shoots 47% from the floor, 39% from 3, and 80% from the line, while getting all defense votes. That's a top 40 player projection, according to Vecini, which isn't a bad return for the number 3 pick. I think Daryl Morey and the Sixers will take that.
I will say this though about Knipple, who, by the way, I think Knipple and Flag were their biggest cheerleaders on draft night,
Oh yeah.
just as much as anybody else was. Knipple, I think, needs to shoot more, and I think going the next pick to Charlotte will help out. He would have shot in Philadelphia; he would have been scoring first, but I don't know what his minutes would have been. And I think his minutes could be as starters minutes already for a Charlotte team that has a lot more work to do, let's say,
Oh
than the
yeah.
Philadelphia 76ers.
The state of their team automatically gives him more opportunity to get on the floor and stay on the floor. I think he'll wind up being a solid pro. He's not going to get hunted as much on defense as some people think. I think he's got size and strength to be able to stay with guys on the wing. He's a solid secondary ball handler, offensive creator. But shoot, this as we've said on the show, it's a phrase you've used more often than the rest of us, Rabbi. It's a make or miss league. Knipple can make shots.
Shoot or shoot. All right. Now to the Brooklyn Nets, who went quantity and hopefully for them quality with 5 first-round picks, and all of them at this moment, 10:40 Eastern, Friday night, are still Nets. They probably will still be Nets, but check back again later if it's different. Note the timestamp. With pick 8, they picked Yegor Demid, a small forward from BYU. Then pick 19 was Nolan Traore, a point guard from France. Pick 22 was, let's see if I can pronounce this correctly, Drake Powell, shooting guard from UNC. It was the Hawks pick, by the way, originally, but that gets traded to the Nets. We'll talk about a little bit later on when we talk about the Celtics. That's right. Think about that. Pick 26 was Ben Saraf, shooting guard from Israel, and pick 27 right after that was Danny Wolf, power forward from Michigan. All right. Anthony, tell us about the top draft pick of the 5, and that's number 8 pick Yegor Demid from BYU. It was pretty good in the tournament, especially playing in Newark at the regionals. This the right pick or the wrong pick as the Nets journey on Wednesday started off?
Initially I thought this was a surprising pick. I was leaning towards
Big
wrong
time.
pick. But you know what? Now that I read some of the pre-draft analysis and considering where the Nets are, this is not a bad pick. I mean, right now they have a roster that's very guard heavy. They're gonna have to figure out what to do with the assets in the backcourt that they have. But the with the skinny on Diego Dimon, played one as you mentioned, the first played one season in BYU. First Russian-born player drafted since 2013. Played one season BYU, averaged 10.6 points a game, 5.5 assists, 4 rebounds. Helped BYU get to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2011. Um, he started 33 games, catalyst for the team NCAA tournament run. This, the background on him is he has size and pass ability to stand out. Shooting concerns is a bit of a problem with 27% from 3-point range and 41% from the field. And the more I read about that, I'm starting to think this guy reminds me of Ben Simmons, doesn't he? A guy who a 6'8" guy who can pass, who is a very prolific passer, has length for defense, but can't shoot if he was facing literally 2 feet away from the basket. But in a situation of Brooklyn Nets, where they're pretty much going through a youth movement, it's not a bad pick because he's gonna have time and room to develop. He's gonna play, obviously. He's gonna get heavy minutes. He's gonna have a chance to develop his outside game, and that's gonna be the key. I mean, whether or not this becomes a steal at number 8 for the Brooklyn Nets down the line, or if it's a potential draft bust that we're not talking about 4 years from now. It all depends on whether or not he can finish developing his offensive game, be a little more consistent from the outside shot, um, and be able to maintain that. And that's gonna be the focus. I mean, I'm assuming he's gonna play summer league. He might have some time in the G League throughout the season, but he's gonna get some playing time too, especially during preseason games.
Oh
So
yeah.
he's gonna get the opportunity to grow, learn, develop his game, learn how to play at the NBA pace, which obviously it's a little more fast at a much faster pace than ever before, particularly the way BYU plays usually play the offensive games. So it's a good pick because of the situation he finds himself in. He's a young player who's going to immediately get a lot of playing time because the team he's going to is in a major rebuild.
The one thing I will say this though, BYU has more of a pro style offense now that they played. They played at one of the fastest paces this past year, and their shots were heavy. But that's a guy who missed a lot of open 3-pointers too, and that's something that the scouting reports have mentioned on to me. It'll be very interesting to see going forward what kind of shots he's going to be able to get, and will he stay the whole year in Brooklyn? I think that would be a yes, but we'll see what happens. Jay, you got the Tar Heel and Powell. That was pick 22. You got a Wolverine and Wolf. That was pick 27. Talk about the two boys of teams that you follow. Right pick or wrong pick for the Nets with their third and fifth picks of that first round.
I'll start with Drake Powell. He will become a Net once the three-team trade that sent Kristaps Porzingis to Atlanta and conveyed the Hawks' first-round pick at number 22 to Brooklyn when the NBA's new year kicks in on July 6th. As much as I like Powell, saw plenty of him while he was at UNC, he should have stayed in Chapel Hill as the only thing he has to offer an NBA team right now is energy and some solid defense, especially on the ball, as he does have legit NBA wing size at 6'5" with a 7-foot wingspan. His offensive game, though, scoring, shooting, playmaking, rebounding, etc., none of it is really NBA level at the moment. Thus, he's missing the 3 part of the 3-and-D role that he played at UNC and would likely be his role on an NBA team. But the D is definitely there. No one guarded Cooper Flagg better than Powell, who showed a knack for guarding wings and forwards bigger than he was, especially on the ball. He didn't get a lot of steals, averaged less than 1 per game, but he got plenty of deflections and was generally disruptive as a defender regardless of who he guarded. And with his ability to switch basically 1 through 4, he guarded just about everyone. Now, he did shoot 37.9% from 3 last year, but on low volume, just 2.6 attempts per game. His form will need refining in terms of his mechanics before it even remotely resembles a legitimate NBA three-point shot. His shot motion is funky, to use the technical term. It takes him way too long to get his shot off, and he struggles to do it with any type of rhythm. He does move well without the ball and knows how to find spots as a cutter, especially when defenders leave him to help, like they did most of the time when R.J. Davis was driving to the hole, which resulted in Powell converting at the rim in half-court sets at a 68.2% clip. But that's a little deceiving, as he only took 26% of his shots at the rim in the half court. And of the 30 shots he took, only 7 of them were self-created. Another thing that a wing needs to be able to do at the NBA level. Can he be a useful part of an NBA rotation? Sure, but it's all predicated on his offensive development. So as of today, as much as I hate to dump on a Tar Heel, I have to lean towards this being more of a wrong pick. As for Danny Wolf, he's interesting at number 27. He's a big who can shoot and who an offense can run through with his passing skill and ability to find teammates. I don't think another year in Ann Arbor would have improved his draft stock that much, but he's still going to be doing some developing at the NBA level. He averaged almost a double-double over his last 2 years in college, 14.7 points, 9.7 boards as a sophomore at Yale, 13.2 points, 9.7 boards this past season as a junior at Michigan before declaring for the draft. He improved as a passer while at Michigan, though, averaging 3.6 assists a game. That was second on the squad, showcasing his ability to be a ball-in-hand player with a high basketball IQ who can run ball screen and dribble handoff actions like the guard he used to be. Wolf is the type of big, and he is legitimately 6'11", that allows a team to play the 5-out style that is somewhat in vogue at the moment in the NBA. He's a solid rebounder despite not having overwhelming verticality, and his ability to grab a defensive rebound and start the fast break is further proof that he didn't lose his guard skills with his growth spurt, as was his ability to create off the bounce. It is rare to see a player his size using crossovers, hesitation, inside-out dribbles, and between-the-leg moves out on the perimeter. He's a mismatch against traditional 4s and 5s. He also finishes well, made 59% of his shots at the rim and 58% of his layups. And while it's not his best offensive skill, Wolf is pretty decent at shooting coming off screens as well as on pull-ups, though some improvement and development will be required for him to be considered an NBA level perimeter shooting threat. Where Wolf needs to improve more so is the turnovers. He averaged 3.2 last season at Michigan. His 24% turnover rate was the highest of any potential draft pick, and 25% of those turnovers happened either in ball screen actions or in transition. Part of the issue is that as good as he is with the ball in his hands, his handle can be a bit high, and he tends to play too upright, which allows defenders too many opportunities to poke, dig, and strip him of the ball. He also has a bit of a gunslinger mentality seen in college quarterbacks who think they can force throws into tight windows. Vicini used the Jameis Winston comparison to describe Wolf as a passer. Plenty of TDs, but too many interceptions, though the wider NBA lane may allow some of those interceptions to become touchdowns. There is some concern about his defense, especially as a rim protector if he has to play the 5 at the NBA level. His 1.4 blocks per game is a little deceiving, as a lot of that came when both he and Vlad Golden were on the floor together in a Twin Tower scenario. Wolf struggled when he was tasked with being the primary rim protector. I don't think he'll be a net negative as a defender, but he'll need to adjust to how the NBA game is played, especially in ball screen actions. As good as Wolf was on those on offense, that's how much he'll need to improve on defense. Bottom line, I like this pick for the Nets. Wolf has a very unique skill set for a player his size, and if he can improve the flaws and the team can put him in positions to utilize the things he does well, I agree with Vicini that his upside is worth the gamble. So as of today, I lean towards this being more of a right pick for the Nets.
Okay, so I'm going to actually start the other way and start with pick number 27, the last pick, and that would be Ben Saraf from the German league, playing out of Israel. And now, on the sports lines, here is something that we don't usually provide analysis for. This is the second time in NBA history that there will be 2 Jewish players on one team in 8 years in Wolf and Saraf. So,
no waiting.
2 Jews, no waiting at all. Acquired in 2024, he played for the Israel under-20 team, and actually was playing actually for Renew Farm Ulm, the German basketball team, which is why he was not in attendance to get his awkward hat picture on Wednesday night. He was playing.
And there were so many of those, weren't there?
Oh, there always are, and it's always funnier. A lot of people thought he could have gone a little bit earlier in this draft. It is something that is interesting on this team. Now, Saraf is a very excellent playmaker, above average height, can make almost every type of pass, making reads with ease, drives often, focuses on downhill moves, has great confidence from mid-range. He can be a floor general wherever he lands, but he can play multiple positions. And spoiler alert, on the Nets, you're going to need to have a lot of multiple positions. If he can develop a more consistent three-pointer, and you're going to see a trend that there are bad shooters that they drafted in this draft, that could help out. He has versatility that is valuable, and he could get potential minutes on a lot of teams right now. Whether those minutes are 10 or those minutes are 25, we'll have to determine on what he continues with. Now, you can see comparisons as his point guard precision to Elfrid Payton or high-end Manu Ginobili. We'll see what happens going that very high-end. That is very, very wishful thinking, especially considering it's the 5th pick of your team.
It's an interesting ceiling, to be sure.
It is an interesting ceiling, but again, I think it's also around where a lot of good diamonds in the rough are found. Interesting pick for the Nets. I think it's a meh pick. If I would have to lean, I would lean more towards the bad, but I do like the pick at number 19 of Nolan Traore. Now, this is a guy who 10 months ago would have gone much higher in the draft, would not even have been anywhere near available at 19. Well, his size, his speed, and his shiftiness off the bounce is huge, but his scoring is needs a little bit of work. But can go coast to coast in a flash, and he has NBA spacing, unlike having international spacing. So that's a big help considering you have rules that can help him out in that situation. If he can develop a knockdown jumper, having the separation is going to be huge. He can make beautiful passes. He can drive into paint. And if he can cut down on turnovers, which is another problem, he has a big time chance to have playmaking potential. But he is still very confident and will make turnovers at an alarming rate. Only 30.6% of catch and shoot threes during his pro time overseas, 22.6% of dribble jumper threes. Dribble jumper two is only 28.6%. These are numbers that not only aren't good enough to be starter level, they're almost not good enough to be NBA level overall. That's why Traore dropped. But that elite speed got him this spot. And he's not small. So he needs to help his IQ. He needs to improve his ability in terms of on the court that dropped him from what would have been possibly a top 10 pick to almost not even top 20 pick. But overall, considering the value of what the Nets get at this position, kind of like it for them. I think it's probably, in my opinion, the best value for the pick that they had of the 5 in the first round. But honestly, what I'm thinking is if you have that many picks, you know how you say if you have 5 people that you drafted, you really don't have one person that you drafted? And that's the thing here. The Nets have a lot more issues to go. And I think what they really wanted in this season going forward is one big flag to bring them into the future. And instead, they have 5 little mini dots to help them going forward into the next chapter of what'll seem to be a probably very quiet 2025-26 season. You can see the coaching, you can see the improvement of the team, but Sean Marks knows that there's a lot more room to go because they're definitely not willing to be in that middle zone. They will be on that bottom zone, and they will be willing to try to get to the top. But they need that one thing to help them. And right now, 5 draft picks in the first round is nice because it's cheap, but I don't think it's going to do anything going forward. None of these picks are remarkable in my view. All right. Now with all of that, let's go to the Knicks. They basically didn't have a lot of work to do these last 2 days due to the acquiring of Mikal Bridges last offseason, wiping out a ton of their draft capital, including their first round pick. So they picked 50th as their first and only pick, but stick with me here as Anthony has dropped that again. Their draft pick is actually the one that was picked by the Los Angeles Clippers one spot later at pick number 51. So that got traded to New York. And ladies and gentlemen, it's the 5th Frenchman in this draft, Mohamed Diawara. And I'm going to start with you, Jay. You think this is the wrong pick, but as he inhabits MSG, what do you think the Knicks' hopes of the future are with this guy?
I guarantee you, if the draft had been, I guarantee you, any Knicks fan who was at the draft is booed that selection. I agree with you.
It. How about more like just being like a constant shrugging of the shoulders?
Well, Anthony's back.
Yeah, I'm back.
Back, but Jay, I'm gonna let you start this and finish this off so we don't kind of break the monotony.
No, it's fine. Since I haven't gotten down the weeds yet, let Anthony.
Fine, Anthony, go ahead and just
about the
me on this and make it look stupid.
Yes, I am going to apologize. Like I was telling Jay before we went on the air. I'm actually like I'm trying to honestly I told you I'm trying out new earbuds for the first time.
Awesome.
I didn't realize how sensitive there is. So
awesome.
I was trying to actually adjust, like push the
earbuds
back in.
Don't touch them.
No, I'm trying to push the earbuds
Anthony,
back in.
Go ahead.
Yes. They drafted Mohamed Diawara with the number 50th pick. I am going to lead towards I hate the pick. Well, here's the thing. I mean, when you're drafted that late into the second round, and pretty much all the draft picks moving forward is a bit of a project, if you will, as far as a prospect or somebody you're just gonna build up. You know that they're gonna really help you right away. And Diawara is basically going to be what you call a draft and stash pick. 20-year-old Paris native. Played last year for Cholet Basket in Pro A, which is France's highest basketball league. A member of the under 20 France gold medal team. And this is how much of a bit of a mystery he was to Knicks fans. And unfortunately, Spike Lee got a little too much exercise for standing up and sitting down. When ESPN had him on camera a couple of nights, 24 hours ago. I'm gonna go by NBA draft analyst Eric Gemino as far as his evaluation of Diallo. And he writes, Diallo is a type of role accepting switchable forward NBA teams value with flashes of ball handling and passing that hits at long-term upside. Scoring and shooting is still developing. His motor, basketball IQ, and defensive flexibility should allow him to contribute off the bench. Obviously, we know the Knicks being a win now team, he's not going to be contributing much, if at all, at least this upcoming season for the Knicks. But he's drafted largely due to his ideal size in the wing, his above average defending style, despite being only 20 years old. Defensively, while he doesn't have the ideal size, he has a long wingspan that is great for perimeter defense, particularly a Knick team that on a fly we saw in the postseason kind of picked up switching, which they hadn't did really much all the regular season, almost like a necessity. But when you look at the idea, the fact that Diallo is going to be a guy that's going to be drafting stash, they're going to keep him on the scene so he doesn't count towards the cap whistle for this upcoming season. He's definitely is going to be a work in progress as far as developing him into an NBA player, or at least a high value prospect that can thrive in the G League, as far as being able to get him minutes, meaningful NBA minutes in the near future. By the way, he can also cover the two through four, but also be able to switch out on point guards and play centers. So he is someone who has the ability to be a very diverse defensive player, which is ironic because the Knicks have two of those in OG Anunoby, and as Rabbi mentioned, Mikal Bridges, who the Knicks gave up all of their draft capital just last summer. But yeah, this is I don't like the pick because I would have loved to see the Knicks add someone that can at least maybe give him some kind of depth off the bench as far as a young athletic player with some options off the bench. Um, by the way, the kid they actually initially drafted and traded was someone that would have actually fit that bill and made more sense. Of course, I'll let you two kind of dive into that a little more. But I'm not crazy about this pick because the Knicks in the win now mentality probably needed someone that can help now. And Diarra, maybe he'll be a good player, but we're not going to really see that for the foreseeable future. So again, it's going to be if you had to grade this pick, it would be more of an incomplete. Like you don't like the material, but it's an unfinished product. So you gotta give it a failing grade by default. But at the same time, there isn't a whole lot to kind of give it a grading curve right now because the Knicks really didn't have a whole lot to do this week leading up to the draft.
Yeah, look, I agree with the Athletics' John Hollinger on his take on the Knicks pick here when he says, quote, the first who dat of this draft cycle, Diawara wasn't in either my or Sam Vecini's top 75. He's a 6'8 forward who had a rather underwhelming season as a 20-year-old in the French league, but he does raise New York's total to 16 overseas rights players under their control, including the rights to Luka Mitrovic that were obtained when the Knicks swapped picks 50 and 51 with the Clippers. Like nearly all of them, there seems little chance Diawara will play in the NBA, end quote. Now, I went looking to see who was still on the board when the Knicks made their pick, and ironically, the player I would have had them draft was the player the Clippers took after swapping picks with the Knicks. Kobe Sanders, 6'7" wing out of Nevada. And after looking at the scouting report on him, I'm thinking it was dumb of the Knicks to swap picks here with LA, only to draft someone who screams stash pick. So I very much lean towards Diawara being a wrong pick. Sanders has improved his game in different ways over the last 2 years. As a senior combo guard at Cal Poly, he averaged 19.6 points per game, showing an ability to shoot and score from the mid-range. He shot 45.9% overall from the floor, though just 33.9% from three on a tick under 4 attempts per game. He also showed an ability to get to the line, averaging almost 7 free throw attempts a game, which he knocked down at 87.4%. He transferred to Nevada for a 5th year, and while his scoring dipped to 15.8 points per game, his shooting slash line remained mostly the same. 46% from the floor, 34.2% from three on 3.6 attempts per game. His free throw percentage dropped to 79.5, but he was getting to the line much less, just 5.2 attempts per game. However, his ability as a passer and a playmaker improved, as evidenced by his assists jumping from 3.2 to 4.5, and his turnovers dropping from 2.9 to 1.8 as he spent more time playing point guard, which showed in his ability to play in pick and roll sets, something that's vital in the NBA. His defense is not NBA level, and he does have some holes in his game. Namely, he's not a great three-point shooter, nor is he a great athlete, meaning he's not likely to blow by anyone at the NBA level, which is why he was available late in the second round. But the fundamentals and the basketball IQ are there. There is potential for him to develop into a Terrence Mann type. That's the comp that Hollinger used in his analysis. And frankly, I'd rather see the Knicks draft a player who has had some success in college and put him on a two-way contract and let him develop here where the Knicks could monitor and be more involved in that development than take a player who won't be stateside for at least a year, if not longer, and maybe even never.
The New York stashes is what you could probably call them with all of those stash draft picks. Couple of things I want to get to, and no, I'm not giving you any more Diarra analysis. I think that ship has sailed on the 50th pick of the draft.
Sunk.
A couple of players that I think is interesting that were also picked in the second round that kind of fit Jay's motto or Jay's kind of graphic of preference, not preference, but kind of like mold of people who had success in college. Remember, this 50th pick was not their own pick. Their pick was the 56th. But due to tampering charges against when they picked up Jalen Brunson, which I say worth it, that pick was taken away. But here are some of the picks that you could have gotten in the second round. You could have done a couple of like moves up for these types of people. Ryan Kalkbrenner, who went to Charlotte at 34, who had a great career at Creighton. Jay, you have Janai Broom on your team now at the 35th pick, which I thought was good. Cam Jones of Marquette going to Indiana was interesting. Ooh. I think he's going to have an interesting career.
An interesting pick.
Tyrese Proctor actually going one spot before 50, going to 49 to the Cleveland Cavaliers was in that kind of range. And I think if you had 2 draft picks at 56 and 50, you may have been able to trade up and possibly get one of those guys in that mid-round. Just for the future, by the way, and I'm going to simplify this for anybody at home. If it's an even year, good year for Knicks draft picks. Next year, the Knicks actually have 2 first-round draft picks, their own and a protected pick that they're getting from Washington, but it has to fall below 11 for them to get it. Then 2017, a second-round pick, but 2028, they have a first-round draft pick, but that's subject to a swap, and then it's very confusing, but let's just say next year is probably the last good year for Knicks draft picks in a while until they rebuild and get those draft picks back again, because thus is the NBA way of doing business. Speaking of the NBA way of doing business, the NBA New Year, which starts, as Jay mentioned before, July 6th, no champagne needing to be popped on that date because that date is about as empty with the moves happening and announced all the time before it. That date is as good as a promise from Daryl Morey. Too soon? Too soon?
Come on, let's be specific. A promise from Daryl Morey to James Harden.
It could be other stuff too, but we'll just start with James Harden in the beginning. Anyway, the NBA New Year means hope begins again. Although with the first and second apron, NBA set numbers to keep your total salary under, or you pay a huge price. That means the wheeling and dealing has to be smart, but the goal of improving for a title That doesn't change. It's still the same. So, Jay, who needs to be the smartest, the quickest, the best, the EST of the off season for the NBA?
The team that I'm going to be keeping an eye on is the Sixers' arch rival, and that's the guys up in Beantown. Boston's offseason was always going to be an interesting viewing experience, as the loss of Jason Tatum for next season basically turns 2025-26 into a gap year for the Celtics. It gives them a chance to reset. I can't see them doing a complete teardown and rebuild, and get some breathing room with their salary cap situation. But I did not expect their biggest moves to happen even before they made their draft picks. The confetti from the Thunder's on-court celebration of their first NBA title since leaving Seattle had barely been swept up when Celtics basketball ops boss Brad Stevens sent guard Drew Holiday, a key piece of the Celtics 2024 championship team and a player he acquired in order to get them over that hump after losing to the Warriors in the 2022 finals. San sent him to the Portland Trailblazers for guard Anthony Simons and 2 future second-round draft picks. Holiday, who still has 3 years and $104.4 million left on his contract, including a player option for 2027-28, was very much what the NFL would call a salary cap casualty. Simons is in the final year of his contract and will cost the Celtics just $27.7 million. The trade not only saves Boston about $4.7 million in salary for next season, but it also clears some major future salary off their books. We'll see if Simons is still on the roster come training camp, but if he is, he has the potential to offset some of the loss of offense due to Tatum's injury. Simons averaged 19.3 points per game on 42.6% from the floor, 36.3% from beyond the arc on 8.5 attempts per game, 90.2% from the stripe, with 2.7 boards and 4.8 assists last season. For his career, he's a 38.1% career three-point shooter on decent volume, 6.5 attempts per game. So he'll fit right in with the offense that Boston likes to run. They led the NBA in three-point makes and attempts this past season. On the flip side, he's been a net negative as a defender, the anti-Holiday, if you will, for his career, which might have been one of the reasons Portland was okay with moving on from him. And the ink had barely dried on this deal when Stevens proved the rumor mill correct by trading center Kristaps Porzingis in a 3-team deal involving the Nets and the Hawks. The deal sent Porzingis and a second-round pick to Atlanta, Terrence Mann and Atlanta's first-round pick at number 22 to Brooklyn, as we just discussed, while Boston gets Georges Niang and a second-round pick in return. Porzingis, like Holiday, is a salary cap casualty, and moving him saves the Celtics more than $22 million in 2025-26 salary. Niang, if he remains on the roster, is an excellent three-point shooter as a stretch four, 39.9% for his career on 4.1 attempts per game. So like Simons, he's a good skill set fit for this offense. Also, like Simons, his defense is not his strong suit. At best, he's a net neutral defender and will likely be hunted. Those two trades have combined to put the Celtics about $4.5 million under the second apron, the dreaded second apron, but they would need to shed another $20 million beyond that to escape the luxury tax entirely. Gaining back roster flexibility was something Stevens stressed in his press conference after the first round of the draft, where the Celtics picked 19-year-old Real Madrid wing Hugo Gonzalez, who is a solid defender but a suspect shooter, and an interesting turn of events, will not be stashed in Spain for another year while he develops further. Thus, his contract will count $2.3 million against next year's cap, basically cutting that $4.5 million in savings in half. Stevens didn't directly discuss the two trades. By NBA rules, he can't until the new NBA year begins on July 6th, but he hinted that more changes could be coming soon, repeatedly emphasizing the need to regain the Celtics roster flexibility. He also said he'd like to re-sign Luke Cornett and Al Horford this summer, so cutting salary is a necessity because as things currently stand, re-signing even one of them at current market value would push the Celtics right back above the second apron. Ideally, Stevens would like to cut another $15 million in salary. How does he do that? Get his two bigs back and field a competitive team? I don't know. And that's why I said at the top that Boston's offseason was going to be an interesting one.
Remember, these things can be interesting moves. They don't necessarily have to be moves of improvement, only improvement possibly in the franchise. And currently, right now, Boston's at a little bit of a crossroads. I'm curious to see if Jaylen Brown is a name that gets floated around. Should it be? No.
No, but the rumor mill is already cranking in that regard.
I feel like we're going to get a big name eventually on the block, and just who is that big name? Anthony, we go from the 2024 champs to the 2022 champs in Golden State. They have a lot of thinking to do, and can they add to what could have been a very good season, even better season if Steph Curry didn't get injured in round number two?
Yep.
Yeah, you think about the about Steph Curry going down and in a second round series against Minnesota. It's a lot of what it leaves the Warriors with a lot of what ifs, especially how Jimmy Butler came in and played big for the Warriors down the stretch. Steph Curry was obviously Steph Curry, and I remember losing my absolute wits over Draymond Green needing to stay on the basketball court, even when he found ways of getting himself thrown out of the games. But yes, when you look at General Manager Mike Dunleavy Jr., the Warriors have the draft capital. They can train draft picks. They also have the right to swap first round picks in the next several years. But the issue is going to be if the Warriors can even put together any kind of salary package that's substantial enough for a trade without including either Jimmy Butler or Draymond Green. Curry, Butler, and Green respectively makes up 85% of the Golden State Warriors payroll. The rest of the team totals out to $30 million. What makes Javier Kaminga's situation all the more important. They were expected to tender him at a 7.9 million one-year qualifying offer, which would make him a restricted free agent. The Nets, up to this point, has been the only team to offer a salary of $20 million or more, which the Warriors could match. That would be the best option to explore a sign and trade. But that presents a challenge in itself because Kaminga would have to sign at least a 3-year contract, and with the first year being guaranteed, and only 50% of that first year of that salary is guaranteed. It goes out in a trade. So the Warriors had a lot of financial maneuvering to do. They're also $25 million below the first apron, which also means, and I'm just reading this from Brandon, it would not be allowed to trade for a player earning more than that amount unless additional salary is included. So right now, a lot of math is going to be going on in the Warriors front office if they want to try to improve this team outside of the big three without having to give up one of those parts of the big three. You know it's not going to be Curry, but either they would love to try to hold on to Draymond, obviously, and they definitely want to try to keep Jimmy Butler and try to give him one more run. The question is just going to be how do you improve a team when your financial restraints is so restricted right now?
And we've mentioned before, this is a team that has a chance to make some noise or really have that one last run because once you get past the Thunder, we'll talk about them in a second, it's kind of a mishmash out there. And if you think Kamiga is staying for anything more than you think he's worth, just look at the fact that Naz Reid just got a 5-year,
Yeah.
$125 million extension tonight from
Yep,
Yes,
saw that.
Minnesota.
yeah, I saw that.
So
And he
he
was
getting
not
paid
good
for a
in that
six
conference
man.
finals.
Yeah, he getting
Yeah.
paid for still being at the role that he is, which is a good score, but still a sixth man. Okay. I honestly think that all roads this offseason just lead to the Bucks in some way, shape, or form. Now, the Bucks in the last 2 years have found themselves being the victim of the yes sirs, so to speak, in the Indiana Pacers. I hate that phrase so much. Thank God that didn't win the NBA title. But I really think that this team is going to be interesting, not just because of the fact that because of the Damian Lillard Achilles injury that happened in game four of the Eastern Conference series against Indiana, that made Giannis pretty much a one-man band. Holiday is gone. Middleton is gone. Wasn't even where he was after what happened to be a 30.4 point, 11.9 rebound, 6.5 assist season. But there's a lot of free agents on this team. Probably their next three best players, in my view, outside of that. Brook Lopez has been pretty much a stalwart for this team at the center position for a long time. He's the guy that was the starter for the 2021 champs. and he's a free agent. Bobby Portis is a free agent. He was a very big factor off the bench in the 2021 run, and even though he had a performance-enhancing drug suspension this year, still a big factor going forward for any team off the bench. He would be a great six-man nominee. He got six-man of the year votes just not too long ago. Then you have Gary Trent Jr. had a very good postseason, including a game where he randomly ended up scoring 30 points a couple of games against Indiana. Also had a key turnover in game 5 that pretty much cost them that series to go back to Milwaukee for game 6. But you got a lot of options. Now, Giannis has said vehemently, and a lot of people next to him, he hasn't said up front, but a lot of people around him said he wants to stay in Milwaukee. But you never know what this NBA holds. You never know what management wants. You and I have talked about it for months. Does Giannis want to spend the peak years of a career that is certainly Hall of Fame worthy? That is certainly a player that is such a unicorn. He demands to be nothing more than an alpha on whatever team that he's on. That's the real question going forward, because there's a lot of teams that could have the options to get a Giannis Antetokounmpo in the future. And again, I said it before, there is going to be a white whale in this NBA offseason. There always is a white whale in the NBA offseason. That's how they make the other half of their money, by the expectations that happen going into the offseason. The question is, Anthony, is Giannis that white whale?
Well, I would say this, and maybe going back and forth on this. I do think because time has kind of passed, and I think because maybe he's emotionally settled, that he's thought about it. Maybe staying in Milwaukee is where he wants to be, because that's been his whole career. But you gotta think about the frustration that Giannis was probably feeling as a basketball player. Think about this. This is the third straight year the Milwaukee Bucks bowed out in the first round of playoffs. I mean, just 3 years ago, they were the 1 seed and got upset in the first round. In the last 2 years, injuries kind of sidetracked them in the first round series. And again, against Indiana at the expense of the Indiana Pacers. And the team around Giannis have downgraded. No Chris Middleton, no Drew Holiday. Brook Lopez is not exactly the Brook Lopez you saw that helped them in 2021. Bobby Portis has been a little more up and down, up and down. He's gotten older.
And the suspension hurt him a lot, too.
Yes, and Damian Lillard just can't stay on the court. So that is a lot of, for a guy like Giannis, who was, despite what something ESPN personality said, has accomplished more than anyone with his humble beginnings can ask for on and off the basketball court, and become a national hero in his home country agrees. Mm-hmm. There was a source of frustration in the fact that he does demand the best, not just of himself, but of the situation and the players around him, because he still feels he can contend for a championship. And there's going to be points where he's going to question whether or not it's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where he's beloved. And he's the shining example of being a big star who can thrive in a small market environment and still be not just a mainstream star, but an international global star. But I do ultimately think he stays in Milwaukee. For me personally, I would love to see him finish his career with the Milwaukee Bucks, because we just don't see that anymore. Where you see a homegrown talent who went from an unknown that announcers couldn't pronounce his name correctly to you're like a fool if you do mispronounce his name now, and he literally just go by one name. That's one day for me. I saw a lot of Knicks fans kind of thought playing NBA 2K fantasy GM and throwing on trades. That doesn't make sense on the part of Milwaukee Bucks perspective. Let alone why on earth would the Knicks make these deals and already add to the lack of depth as it is going into the off season. But yes, that's just my personal opinion. I would hope to see Giannis Antetokounmpo finish his career in Milwaukee, and hopefully the Milwaukee Bucks can figure out a way to build the team a little better around him, and hopefully for the best. And I'm a big Damian Lillard fan that he could get healthy again and be able to stay on the basketball court because that's been kind of the biggest trade off in the last 2 years. His partner in crime just not being available enough, not just in the regular season, but we saw him go down with a torn Achilles in the playoffs, and we don't know when he's going to be available next season, if at all. And he's older, he's an older player now. So there's a lot of question marks up in the air, not with Giannis himself really, as much as what's the direction this Milwaukee Buck team is going right now.
Here's my take on this, guys. And I know, look, everybody is going to be throwing out, everything about Giannis and what they think he should do. How can he stay in Milwaukee? This team's going nowhere. He's going to lose Lillard for a year. How are they going to put any pieces around him to make them any competitive? Here's the thing. Yeah, Lillard's gone for the next year, but so is Jason Tatum. So is Tyrese Halliburton. The East is a lot more up in the air right now than it's been since Milwaukee won its title. But the other thing this is going to be an interesting case study. Anthony, you talk about a guy who came from nowhere to be, a guy whose name couldn't get pronounced, to now he is a one-name superstar, same level as LeBron, Steph. You don't need to drop a last name. You say Giannis, everybody knows. He has never struck me, and this comes across in all of his interviews, never struck me as a guy who wants the big spotlight that comes with being in a major market, playing for a marquee franchise, if you will. His personality and the way he lives his life off the court, he's a perfect fit for Milwaukee. He has embraced Milwaukee's lifestyle, if you will, and they've embraced him back. He has said that in terms of his life outside of basketball, he can't think of any other place to live his life, raise his family, and be comfortable. He gets recognized, sure, but he doesn't get harassed. He can still live his life, even as a public as a figure as he is in that city. So, as someone who never struck me as a guy who was going to be part of that rings culture where it's all about hunting, the best spot to land a Larry O'Brien, if you will. He's the anti-Kevin Durant, if you will, in terms of that. So it is going to be interesting. An interesting case study is terms of like when all, outside, once you get past all the noise, which way this thing goes. I agree with you, Ant. To me, because we so rarely see a guy land on a team, improve his game, become one of the best players in the game while playing for that team, win a title for that team, and still play out the rest of his career as a one jersey kind of guy. I agree with you. I'm with you on this. I would love to see that be the way the story goes and ends for Giannis.
I would love to see it too, but in the NBA, I'm not putting anything out there despite all of the logic of the arguments that it says it, because when it comes to NBA off seasons, I think the logic gets thrown away a lot more than possibly can. The way the free agency pool is, this should be the quietest off season known to mankind, and it's not going to be that way. Not at all. Little do we understand, due to the way that the NBA works, with all this talk about the draft and future that we've had, but about 120 hours ago, we crowned an NBA champion for the previous season of 24-25, and it's the Oklahoma City Thunder, whose 103-91 Game 7 victory over the Pacers in the NBA Finals gave the Thunder their first championship ever as that incarnation of a franchise whose first champion since Shakedown Kids 1979, when the Thunder were, hold on to your ears, Emerald City, the Seattle Supersonics. Bow your head. A lot to get to in this Game 7. Some good, some bad, some unfortunate, but everything has to start with the good, Jay. And the Thunder secured Mr. Larry O'Brien with a dominant second half.
Yeah, they won because they did exactly what I said they needed to do, both on our finals preview and our Game 7 preview. Their stars played like stars, and their offense and defense did what it does. SGA didn't have his most efficient shooting night. He was 8 for 27 from the floor, 2 of 12 from beyond the arc. Did go 11 of 12 from the line, so he does keep his free throw merchant card. And routes at 29 points, but he added 5 boards along with 12 dimes against just 1 turnover as he atoned for the 8 turnovers in game 6 against just 2 assists. He averaged 30.3 points per game, 4.6 boards, 5.6 assists, and 1.9 steals, 1.6 blocks for the series, and took home the Finals MVP trophy, becoming the first player to win the scoring title, regular season MVP, conference finals MVP, and finals MVP since conference MVPs were first awarded in 2022. Jalen Williams didn't have a great shooting night either. He went just 7 of 20 from the floor, 2 of 7 from 3, 4 of 6 from the line, en route to 20 points, but he did have 4 boards, 4 assists, and just 1 turnover. But on the night the Thunder needed him to step up most, the third member of OKC's Big Three had quite possibly his best all-around game of the series, as Chet Holmgren put up 18 points on 6 of 8 from the floor, 1 of 2 from 3, 5 of 8 from the line, along with 8 rebounds and 5 blocks, the most ever in a Game 7. And last but not least, the Thunder's defense forced 23 Pacer turnovers and converted them into 32 points. Their trio of defensive dogs, Alex Caruso, Lou Dort, and Cason Wallace, each had 3 steals, accounting for 9 of the team's 13 pickoffs. When their defense sets up their offense like that, the Thunder are difficult to beat. It's even harder when that offense commits only 8 turnovers of their own, leading to just 10 points by Indiana. They did allow the Pacers to shoot 11 of 28 from 3. That's 39.3%, while shooting just 11 of 40 themselves from beyond the arc, 27.5%. But they mitigated that by winning the points in the paint battle, 40-26, and second chance point battle, 22-15. It wasn't their most dominant performance of the finals, and Indiana losing star guard Tyrese Halliburton to a torn Achilles in the first quarter definitely swung things in OKC's favor. Oh, how's this for weird, guys? All 3 players who torn Achilles in this year's playoff, Halliburton, Tatum, and Damian Lillard, all wear number 0. Go figure. But the things that got the Thunder 68 regular season wins and the right to have that Game 7 on their own floor got them the franchise's first Larry O'Brien trophy since, as the rabbi said, moving from Seattle to OKC.
And Anthony, final thoughts on a very wild NBA Finals.
You know what? First off, it was a great series.
Yeah.
From the Pacers once again, with a miraculous comeback to steal game 1. Tyrese Halliburton's brilliance in game 3. SGA responding like a superstar in an MVP in game 4, especially the fourth quarter. And yes, seeing Tyrese Halliburton go down, definitely look. And I say this as a Knicks fan, that was a gut punch if you are a basketball fan. Because if you like I said, if you're a Knicks fan, this is the second time in this postseason you saw a player, at least indirectly, that the Knicks had to deal with go down with an injury. Jason Tatum in the second round of that respective series. But what I do, and obviously, Rabbi, you're gonna talk about Indiana more. To the Pacers' credit, they didn't exactly throw in a towel when Halliburton went down. They were very much still in that game. And actually had to lead a couple of times in the second half of that game. TJ McConnell is going to be a story that it's going to get lost in the shuffle, but a guy who came off the bench and we saw it just last year in the postseason run, just a guy who just this motor never stops. Like he was just literally all over the place. But what I liked about this series was, besides the fact that it is a perfect example of parity in the NBA, something I thought growing up I would never see because I grew up, at least in my earliest basketball memory, of the Lakers and Celtics kind of dominating the 80s respectively.
Yep.
And then you saw the Pistons go back to back, the bad boys, and then right into that, the Bulls winning 6 out of 8 with the Rockets back-to-back championships kind of sandwiched in between. And then in the 2000s, it was the Lakers and the Spurs, the 2010s, you saw the Heatles, and then you saw the Golden State Warriors dynasty. you realize that the Lakers and Celtics is accounting for almost 40 NBA championships combined just between those two teams. And the fact that it could be, we probably saw the end of between that, the CBA, the TN1 and 2, as far as the dealing with cap restrictions, we could have been seeing the end of the super team era.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's made it harder for teams to keep certain players or to even stack a roster like we saw in the 2010s.
Yeah, there's
Um,
no way to keep 3 max contract players anymore.
yeah, and the thing is, and I think it's a good thing for the NBA. I think that was something that David Stone wanted to see eventually, that Adam Silver has been able to manifest as a commissioner, as far as some kind of competitive balance across the league. You look at teams that were in the playoffs just this season. We saw the Detroit Pistons, a young up-and-coming team, in the postseason for the first time since 2019, before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We saw the Orlando Magic early in the year, what they can be when they're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a great series between the Nuggets and the Clippers that saw its shares of dramatics. The young Rockets, even Adoka, just 3 years removed from a controversial exit from the Celtics head coaching job, goes down to Houston. They're the number 2 seed in the Western Conference, and now you're going into next season. Outside of Oklahoma City Thunder, the Western Conference is wide open. And we know about the Eastern Conference because of the unfortunate injuries to some of the league's best. And the fact that that's opened the door. The Knicks going has a heavy favorite to win the Eastern Conference, but when has the Knicks ever done well as a favorite under any circumstances?
Only because they're the only team whose starting 5 is intact.
They're not the favorite, by the way. Cleveland is probably up
Cleveland
there.
is the favorite. But let's just be honest. The Knicks starting 5 is intact. No thanks to Tom Thibodeau, who almost ran him into the ground in 7 occasions. But yes, the league, I think, is as fun as it ever been. The finals, I think people kind of toned it off because it was 2 small market teams. But you know what? This is the best basketball I've seen in a very long time between 2 teams that was an epitome of unselfishness, of coming in, knowing what role and responsibility you have in the team. Rick Carlisle needs his flowers for how he managed not just the Pacers, but how to use every player to the max on that roster. They were a team that legitimately went 12 deep in that postseason run. And obviously the Oklahoma City Thunder, the youngest team in the NBA. I think people are throwing that word dynasty around a little too loosely. They won one. Let this team celebrate. Alcohol-free celebrate this championship. Because being a hunter is a lot different than being a hunter. And that's a challenge the Oklahoma City Thunder at that young age is going to find out going into next season. But yes, I think the NBA is as great as good as it's ever been. We're seeing younger players, which is great. And we haven't mentioned the fact that 40-year-old LeBron James is still one of the best players in the game.
It's
and
funny.
The Lakers are still hanging around, and we're going to next year for the first time without the Bucks family being the primary owners of this team. So there's a lot
day-to-day operations. Jeannie ain't going anywhere.
Jeannie is still involved, but the Bucks family
moving
are not
on
owning the team.
It's kind of funny, and you also mentioned the fact that with all of the teams you mentioned in the West, you didn't even mention the Lakers and Doncic going forward in a full season, and the team that has made the last 2 Western Conference Finals in the Minnesota Timberwolves. They are up and coming too. By the way, interesting fact about I think it was mentioned on the last show, but I have to mention it again. The first team ever, the Indiana Pacers in league history, to have 8 players score 200 or more points in a single postseason. And if it were for TJ McConnell, you would have had 8 double-digit regular season scores as well, points per game. on that team. McConnell had 9.1 points per game in the regular season. Okay, so Anthony, you kind of alluded to it before. This is the first time in NBA history we've had a streak of different champions in 7 years. Toronto in 19, the Lakers in 20, the Milwaukee Bucks in 21, the Golden State Warriors in 22, the Denver Nuggets in 23, the Boston Celtics in 24, and this year, the Oklahoma City Thunder in 25. But you remember the champions. The losers, some people remember the Warriors. Most people remember the Warriors of 19. Most people remember the Heat of 20. Some people like to remember the Suns of 21. Nobody likes to hear about the Suns of 22. The Heat of 23 were an 8 seed. The Mavs of 24 were actually with Luka Doncic at one point. But out of all of them, the 24-25 Pacers are a team that is going to be remembered as much, if not more, than the team that beat them for the championship. No offense to the Thunder, by the way. This is not the peak, obviously, of that team. By the way, Jalen Williams also, if you mentioned, did not like drinking a beer because he had only drank tequila during his whole entire time until the moment the beer touched his lips in the post game celebration. But the Thunder will be back. I'm not saying that the Pacers won't be back, but the way you saw this team in the postseason mentioned the fact that this is basically a team of budding Jimmy Chitwoods from this entire postseason. They started the season 16-18, and then the rest of the season went 34-14 and 15-8 in the playoffs. No big deal. They overcame 20-point deficits against the Bucks and the Cavaliers. Trailed by 14 with less than 3 minutes left in game one versus the Knicks. Easy. 9-2 in clutch games in these playoffs, tops among participating teams. Won 4 games in the playoffs after trailing by at least 17. Won 5 games in the playoffs after trailing by at least 15. It was a team that it almost made, this is the best an Indiana Pacers team has ever done, by the way, because the last team got to game 6 of the 2000 NBA Finals against the Los Angeles Lakers when they won their first title with Shaq and Kobe. This team got to game 7. And as Anthony mentioned, they were in it for about 3.5 quarters, for about 2.5 quarters against the Thunder in that decided game 7, most of it without Tyrese Halliburton. And the way it ended, I wouldn't say tragically, but sadly, with the Halliburton Achilles injury 7 minutes into game 7, in a situation where, I'm sorry, I understand future, all of that stuff, Halliburton was hurt, but it's literally a winner-take-all game for the NBA Finals. If you can play in game 6 and not get criticized, you're playing in game 7 for an NBA championship, and no one should ever question you playing in game 7. If they do, they're not a sports analyst in any way, shape, or form. Sorry. No. But it all entails that the Indiana Pacers are probably one of the most memorable finals losers that we're ever going to see. Probably the most memorable since a notorious loser, the 73-win Golden State Warriors in 2016, almost becoming the most dominant team of all time. But you lose the finals, you lose that distinction. But how does a 50-win team do it? They do it with TJ McConnell's bench play, Pascal Siakam becoming a top 20 player in the league with the way that he was playing this entire postseason, Tyrese Halliburton becoming the second coming of Reggie Miller, and possibly better with his entire skill set, at least in this playoffs, not necessarily going through his whole repertoire. We'll see how that develops. And an enormous fan base that shows that Indiana really is a basketball haven. When you think about it, that is lucky to get just not only a men's basketball team that's going to sell out all the time professionally, but a women's basketball team that is going to sell out all the time eventually, because this is a team that is going to perpetually be interesting, especially, and they will always be a team in NBA lore in my book. I hate it as a Knicks fan, but this is a Pacers team that wrote a great story that unfortunately just didn't have that final chapter written towards it. I don't know what the future of Indiana is going to be. I think there's more moves to be made with this team because it looks like Halliburton's going to miss the 2025-26 season. Even if he comes back for part of it, it's not going to be as effective as it would be if, he was healthy. But I'm very interested to see what happens in Indiana in the future. Have they built something for 25-26, even 26-27? Who knows? But even with a 7-game loss, folks are going to look back in history and remember the 2024-25 playoffs as the one that the Thunder won the title and the one that the Pacers showed up throughout the whole entire thing.
Rabbi, I think Rick Carlisle said it best. This Pacers team was the epitome of, in 49 other states, it's just basketball, but this is Indiana.
Yep, it sure is. All right, that does it. For Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait, and somebody Seattle who thinks that maybe not running the ball with Marshawn Lynch in the Super Bowl 10 years ago might have not been as overrated as a play that you might think.
Wow.
Just kidding, Seattle. Just kidding, Seattle. Don't at me. Of course, it's a stupid decision. I love you guys. don't hate me, okay? Don't hate me. I'll wear my Seattle Kraken shirt. I should have worn that instead to be really nice to you guys. Anyway, this has been On the Sports Lines. YouTube.com/On the Sports Lines on demand. Facebook.com/On the Sports Lines live. And Twitter, Jay, make of it what you will.
Our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sports Lines, where you'll find a link to each new show, including today's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. I know this is an NBA-centric show, but it's Friday. We're in the middle of the baseball season, and the Athletic's Jason Stark is back from vacation, so I've posted a link to his Weird and Wild column. It always has plenty of things that can be only explained by the hashtag #BecauseBaseball, and it's always a fun read. It's very much worth your time to check out.
2 weeks back, baseball midseason show. Good night. We'll see you then.
Good night, everyone.